Hi, you guys. It's MJ from Alta Love. How are you? So, the message coming through for today's share is about the emotions of jealousy and resentment, and how ultimately these are quite what I would consider often less discussed, very apparent to many of us, obviously, and we know it in our own self, in our own reality. Here again is where we can really bring up the discussion point of the mainstream media propaganda and how most of our drama and the violence and the drama on TV is ultimately programming our consciousness to be acting out these stories, right? And we all know about territorialism in our relationships and being jealous of other women, for example, because of how they look or how much money they have or what have you. And of course, when I just say that, I can see how jealousy and resentment are totally linked in to fear and judgment, um, fear and loathing, even. Um, of course, it's coming from this separation wound. It's coming from this not enoughness. And when we're already in our reactivity and or we're already in quite entrenched patterns of fear, jealousy and resentment can often be subtly hidden, and or what I've observed are that people just kind of brush it off like, so what? So what if I have a bit of jealousy, or so what if I have a resentment? And yet what I've observed is that these energies as driving forces in our lives, one, especially again with these veils of different well-being industries and such things, is that increasingly what I'm aware is that people, I was about to say and myself, but I'm like, but I have a channel where I like expose myself, right? So I'm like, I really can't put myself in that category. But depending on the facade or the egoic projection we're desiring to project into the world, when life experience presents us with these certain dynamics, i.e., resentment or jealousy, I would dare deem that the beginning of the end of the relationship. So if a couple are jealous of each other and they're sort of subtly competing, but they don't want to admit that that's going on, and or they're just not aware that that's the energetic dance that's happening. And we all know resentment. We know resentment can build up, and I guess I highlight the jealousy resentment piece because they're and envy and jealousy, and there's stuff that we all kind of feel, and part of us, I think it's like the stress piece, we've just sort of accepted in some assumptive reasoning that stress is just part of life, or jealousy is just part of life. And I sort of think, well, yeah, when you cut off people's power and then you divide them up and conquer them through fear, there's going to be some layers of shit, right? And so over time, over these ages of cycles and generations, we've had the jealousy piece because we've all been forced into these survival enslavement patterns. Ultimately, in our true heart of unity, there's no how is that jealousy and resentment possible? Jealousy and resentment are only possible in fear and separation. When you're in loving union, there's no space for these emotions, right? And this is where I noodle with certain energies, and I withdraw, and I spend a lot of time by myself working out and refining and honing the awareness of these energetic dances and how they appear in our lives and how they manifest in our lives. And the reason that jealousy and resentment are usually in that covert bracket is that we don't want to admit we're too special or we're too spiritually aware, or well, no, I never felt that. And you're like, okay. And it's that we don't want to admit it. And I can remember exposing that stuff in myself as I um essentially when I moved down to the area of Devon in England, I was sort of the main an initiator of the yoga back in 2011 and 2012. I was starting to do the hot yoga. I was doing something called surf yoga, and I really kind of up leveled the yoga community in this area. And then, obviously, within a couple of years, more and more people, girls coming to my class, boys coming to my class, they started doing and going off and doing their yoga teacher training. And these are all kind of group consciousnesses of people who are kind of born and raised in a town. And if any of you are wanderers or nomadic or travelers, you'll know that it's always a bit like edgy when you're a random wanderer type descending into these small communities. I have to say I've been embraced, and the people of this area have. That's why I'm still here, obviously. At the same time, um, there was no necessarily regard for my business. People just started setting up sessions everywhere, and I was quite relieved because it meant that I could start to go and do just more private sessions and essentially not have to hustle running classes in that regard. And yet when I had one of my private clients come to have a session with me, pretty much after I'd gone completely private, um, she mentioned how busy one of the teachers used to come to my sessions and then eventually set up her own sessions. And then my private client came around and saying, "Whoa, like her classes are so busy." So instead of harboring that, I felt stuff come up within me and I could have just shrugged it off. But instead, I wrote a blog about it. I confessed my jealousy. I confessed the fact that, okay, we can all parade around being love and light and like yoga teachers and like, I don't feel those feelings. I'm basically beyond them because I'm a yoga teacher. And that's not, I've experienced firsthand professional jealousy. I've experienced firsthand professional resentment. Working with a friend of mine on her yoga studio. And then I went away to see my family for a month and I came back and she basically told me that she resented the fact that I was away, then denied the fact that she felt it, and then tried to basically swindle me out of 500 pounds. And then when I addressed it and itemized it, she's like, "Oh," I'm like, "Yeah, I can add numbers together. Amazing, isn't it?" But that is the kind of behavior that jealousy and resentment create. I had somebody, basically, I worked on building a business for somebody for 7 months. And then pretty much in my awareness, out of nowhere, they just pulled the plug. So, and then I went to see a few healers and a few psychics to heal from the experience. And that one of the healers actually said, "This sounds like jealousy. This sounds like professional jealousy," which means that this person was willing, because of the fierceness of the jealousy, they'd opted to actually dissolve the business and cut me out of their life rather than actually own up to feeling the feelings that they were feeling. And of course we sometimes gossip and create fallacy. So also it was really nice when I got to hear from other people what she was saying about me, but never to my face, right? So professional and quite hard edge business vibes, but never a direct, like, "This is why, and this is what you did, and this is how I felt." I never even knew. I just got to hear from other people what was being discussed about me and about my behavior, which was totally shocking. At the same time, going back all these years, this was the beginning for me of total embracing of conscious transformation, self-responsibility, and, well, here I am today with you guys sharing about this experience. It's also how I've learned about covert narcissism, where I've had direct experience with sociopaths and um, passive aggressive. And we all do it. I'm not here pointing fingers, you guys. I'm sharing my direct life experience. And I've never really like closed off to people. People just put you, and I know I do the same. Put people in boxes. I'm done there. I don't want that anymore. And or some certain things happen and I suddenly have a perspective shift and realize, actually, like, I'm not even a fan. And that's often happened. Like, people, I, I think this is what happens when you just become really sovereign, really self-responsible, is that I've never been in relationships trying to get stuff from people. It's either just been a joy. But when that starts to get entangled, and or when people are having like emotions that they can't be honest about, the relationship always ends. And it's not up to me to point fingers. I'm just deducing how and why maybe this happened, and I know about it because I felt these. I almost limited and sabotaged my own yoga career out of jealousy and resentment. I felt the impact of it and I felt it in my own life. I felt how it has destroyed my self-esteem. I felt how um, it made me stay in lack and poverty consciousness for most of my adult life because I resented the people who had stuff. And here again is my discernment piece around privilege, blind privilege, narcissism, based in a false economy of enslavement and disempowerment and oppression and exploitation, versus just being real. Like, just be fucking who you are and try to be a decent person. What I'm experiencing here is that the actual economic system has made that quite difficult for people, apparently. People have all these ideas around money being evil or money's so wrong or the system's wrong, and yet they're talking about themselves. They're talking about their own greed. They're talking about their own selfishness, right? They're talking about their own fear of poverty, which is why we tend to hold on, and all of these different layers of emotions. And I'm not like, we can have professional jealousy from women to women and men and women. And I've had that as well, where people really go hard in trying to manipulate me, literally just to keep me down so that they can feel superior. And this is often why I express so passionately, is that this life hasn't been easy going. And yet I've been able to have the joy of experiencing people's judgment towards me, people's many multi-layered assumptions about how much money I have, about what kind of life I've walked. And it hurts ultimately. When we judge one another, it hurts. At the same time, that's different than shining light for somebody and saying your behavior is shining light into some emotional trauma that should be healed or needs to be healed. And yet, when somebody refuses to see it and wants to perpetuate a blame cycle, you have to walk away from those energies. And that is something I'm firm in, and I always check in with myself. Whatever I feel and sense and am sort of projecting in any given moment, what I'm aware of is being in my integrity, so that if that is something I'm feeling about another, as long as I could honestly address it out in the open, I got no problem with it. I know it might seem a bit harsh. I know it might seem a bit edgy. I'm just fucking damn tired of pretending with groups of people. So I don't. I tend to like either just withdrawal or hang out. I tend to have one-on-one encounters at the same time. I'm becoming acutely aware of the red flags around one-on-one time with people who just want to have a chat, and I'm like, what do you want from me? And that's something as well. Was part of the reason I've come off Facebook. I don't want anything. I just want to have a chat, and I'm like, yeah, that's wanting something though. I just want to grow. Yeah, that's wanting something from me. That's part of the exchange. That's part of, I know we can often share and be kind here on these platforms, but recognize that this is a service being provided. And that when you're taking someone's time, that is essentially energy, time, emotion, right? And so there's always this discernment stuff that we're working on and we're working through around, and this is the thing about probably more imprinted for the women, but like being able to say no, or saying what you mean, saying what you need from people or not. That was something I had with the people pleasing, feeling ever so obliged to constantly respond to people or always say yes and always be nice, and then realizing like not everyone's going to understand this. And a lot of the energy of the world as it continues to heal is vampiric and parasitic. And the paradox of that is that people don't know this consciously at all. They're locked into ancestral behavioral pattern based on their own victimhood, based on their own separation wounds, and based on enslavement. What a lot of us have to accept is that, so there are beings choosing that. It's their choice. It doesn't matter if it's conscious or unconscious. It's like any of us on this journey. There was a time when I was totally unconscious. Does that do I go back to that person and kind of keep betting their heads again? They go, "You're so unconscious. You so don't know anything." No, we're all on our divine journey, and we are all sovereign beings. So we don't need to go around fixing everybody. We just get to be who we are. And this is something else I think that any of us putting our messages out there, sharing of the self from the heart, it's no different than a painter making a painting. These videos are just expressive creations from my heart. They don't attach to them. Sometimes I go back 6 years and they're amazing and I get it. And other times I might listen to a video and think, oh, that means nothing to me anymore. And that's why it's also interesting getting feedback from people who watch a video from 6 months ago or da 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 da, and they make many different assumptions about who I am or where my life is, or increasingly as well, the assumption of what my personal life looks like. And the fact that people can make an assumption or make a claim of me belonging to them, or belonging to some desire, and not even asking about my personal life or my personal situation, right? So it's really interesting, the different energies that we're coming at. And ultimately, I just totally went on a tangent, by the way. Like, I could hear myself going off, and then in myself was like, oh, don't come back, Miles. Let's stop talking about your past abuse patterns, okay? let's just let's just be free here now, and highlight your brothers and sisters to the fact that, hey guys, if you can spot jealousy and resentment, deal with it. Basically, own it. Oh, there it is. Yep, I have hardcore jealousy toward that person or towards that group of people or what have you. And that came up. One of you said, "Oh, it really highlighted my resentment toward the spiritual community." What represent? At least you can own it. Part of the reason a lot of us are popping out of those spiritual communities is because we're realizing all this shit is still all there. That plenty of teachers and guides and healers are right up in their own ego, for sure, for sure. And I say this again with a heart of compassion, but it's ultimately to do with how people are living their lives in resonance to the self that one is. So if it doesn't resonate, there, that's not your connection. Therefore, that person could never have any power over you. They could never know your path. If you know your path, start to commit to that path solely, solely. We don't need to get each other's, and yet we do. As long as we do, we need to do all the courses and do all the trainings and do all the healings and go back over and over and over again to this healer and that healer and da, 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 da. As long as we believe that we're wrong, as long as we keep making excuses, we'll keep going back into these healing cycles or these healing patterns or these healing circles to fix ourselves, because we're not owning our truth in the moment, day-to-day moment. And this is often what I see even with plant medicine or any other thing. However, there's difference in choices and joy, right? When we're making a choice out of joy, it's different when we're making a choice out of, I am fucked up and wrong and sick, and I need to detox my body because I'm so impure, and I need to go away, and I need to punish myself with these sort of very austere kind of retreats and experiences, because when I go back to my daily life, I go right back into the blaming and attack culture that I was raised in. And then, so this is why I've met people who are doing ayahuasca over and over and over again, is because they're not implementing the practice. They're not, whatever our plant medicine is showing us is ultimately what can, although I have to say, I'm pretty sure cannabis has a little bit of a different thing going on, and it's to do with our food. That's my intuition. That's why a lot of us, I think, are um, smoking, is because, or not even just smoking, but like I know some of you just like have little bits of oil, or because it's legal in North America, right? And to me, cannabis is doing something to our body's chemistry. Those of us certainly called to it, body chemistry, which is helping protect us and actually keep our bodies well. And it's helping us to absorb nutritional information, which is denied us um, because of the corporate GMOs, because of the genetically modified and the pesticides. Basically, it's dead. It's a lot of dead food in the mainstream shops and whatnot. So a lot of us are now, being more guided to the organic food or the non-packaged food, um, the food closest around us, and then ultimately just high vibrational food. Right. So yeah, people go. So that's the cannabis piece, and then there's like the mushrooms, the ayahuasca, the peyote. There's that weird frog thing. I have no interest in that, by the way, because I'm a vegan. I'm like, why poor frogs? Like, why do you have to fucking enslave the frogs just to trip? Have some anyway. um Micro dosing on certain things. I'm somebody who's super duper open-minded. I'm not opposed to pharmaceuticals. I'm mainly at the root of it. I think what gets me are the lying, because we live in a false economy based on survival, inherently due to that cutoff point, the separation. Everything's spun out from that separation. So basically every aspect of our projected field, in essence, is linked to disparity and entanglement through enslavement. So like our unraveling of that is is going to be a pretty big feat, right? And um, really, truly being able to be in the present moment and owning your emotional reactions and owning your emotions generally. I know it's like the hardest thing to do apparently, but it's the only, for me personally in my beingness, that is the gateway to freedom. If you're just reacting and always blaming other people for what's going on in your life, and or going to healers and these and that, constantly looking for what's wrong with you, you will always find stuff. And then if you're looped in blame and attack pain body patterns, you'll find stuff and you'll go on attacks and you'll rip apart community and people, right? The blame and attack culture, and I've seen it in business, and I've seen it in various aspects in my own personal life, and as an adult, I see it acting out in, again, my life, but other people's lives as well. It's not easy, this stuff, and yet what I'm noticing is how easy it is to blame somebody else when it feels uncomfortable for us. And anyone who is a genuine, highly sensitive empath knows exactly what I'm talking about, because we've been absorbing the burden of other people's emotional density for all of our lives. And we're damn tired of it, which is, I know for certain, as I move into my Capricorn ascendant energy, as more and more dominant energy, that book was for me to stand my ground and say, listen, I love you guys. I love all of you very much. I love this whole planet very much. But I can't do it. And because I wrote that book, all of my codependent relationships have been healed, because I wrote that book for myself, to empower myself to my own freedom, because I was damn tired of feeling bad all the time about people's bullshit, especially people that have everything. And me, someone who, as a 20-year-old girl, just had a backpack and came to England by herself. And most people, if they don't set up shop, if they never leave home, if they never really, break out of the mold of their ancestral family dynamic, then they don't have any clue. But it's damn easy to judge and potentially, you know, potentially take people like us down, because we don't lie and cheat and steal, basically. And or if we did, I'm honest about it. I tell you guys, I used to steal when I was a teen, and then when I moved to England, mainly because I was broke all the time and because I had the awareness of the fucking false economy, and I knew that these companies were fucking stealing from poor people in Africa. So it's like a little bit of a fuck you, Topshop, and fuck you, H&M, because you guys have really shitty business practices. At the same time, once I got into the, or not at the same time, once I got into the yoga, but really the truth of it was that I still came to my own integrity of going, still not mine to take. So I stole a pair of boots, plus I was in a country where I thought, oh shit, well, if you ever got caught doing this and got deported, that would not be good. So I stopped stealing. And I don't hoard, because my grandfather was a hoarder, and I'm not really very attached to possessions in general. Mm. And I, again, because I spend a lot of time on my own, it's always been like easy enough for me to be on my own, where I've noticed other people are not like that. you know um so yeah, basically just wrote the book for my own freedom, like a legacy point of, up to that point, right? This is what I've learned, this is what I can see happening, and this is what I know to be true within my own self. And I'm fascinated by perception, because even at this point, I'll come across things that I'm like, basically show me that people that left my life either were in lies, they were spinning lies with me, like finding one, like somebody who's like a really, really like tight, best friend, finding a YouTube channel, and then finding like these things where I'm like, oh, you never even told me about that. You never, which tells me again, there was resentment building, which it's not up to me to figure out whether or not that was right in the consciousness of that person. Like if they knew they were operating from resentment or jealousy, or whether they don't, whether they're just, because in that moment as well, what I'm aware of is that they project the illusion. And I'm very aware of that, because this person has a channel that I'm like, oh, that's what you think happened. Interesting. that's not at all my perception of the situation, right? And even to the point of me getting more and more happy, like me being more and more in love with my life, me and being like abundant and joyful. And then, um, like, same person actually being like, "You're not happy, you're like," and I was just like, "This is so weird." Like, whatever your perception of me is completely not at all what my perception of myself is, or my, and this is why we track different things. And again, ultimately, this person is not in my life. I have no desire to have this person in my life. There's no lack of love. It's all held in love and compassion, but because of that situation, I've had a complete perspective shift, have no desire, very rarely think of these people from my past, again, love and compassion, wishing all these people well on their journey, but there's no desire to go back, right? And this is also a big piece for me about like jealousy, resentment, judgment around money, around finances, is that uh, I'm felt those double edges on both. So rich people dumping on poor people dumping on rich people, middle class people dumping on poor people and rich people, except kissing rich people arse and basically denying and or like judging poor people and just Ugh. But let's just talk spiritual stuff, you guys, and pretend that everything is okay. I'm like, um, and then in the next breath, you know, talk about the political system or talk about any number of things and almost pretend like they're not all connected somehow. And then that's the piece. This is what my spiritual awakening awareness has always had, is like, and yet what all this stuff, who and what does it come back to? Like, people choose to invest in the economy, they choose to invest in the political system by talking about it like it's real. It's all real as long as it's real. So that was like a bit of a vent, actually. I hope it was somehow useful to you. Some of you might resonate with it. If you don't, you can move on by. But thanks a lot for your subscribes, you guys. Thanks a lot for your shares. I really appreciate you guys that are sending in the regular donations. I can't quite express to you how much it means to me and also how valuable it is for me in my life right now. So thank you for being a support to All to Love TV, for being a support to me and Team Love. And, well, really, truly, genuinely, this is all about you, loving you. And so thank you for choosing to love yourself. And thank you for choosing to like show up in your most authentic way. Because to me, that is the gateway, to our humanity, um, evolution, to our humanity's evolution, and ultimately to us living more harmoniously here. So thank you. Thank you for choosing to be the change and for choosing to be love. Thanks, guys. I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.